What's up, guys? This is Corey with DBS Decks. So I'm going to start helping Mark get out a little bit of content. I'll be doing a lot of the tournament breakdowns and things like that moving forward here in the next couple of weeks, especially now that we're hitting regional season. So today we're going to be taking a look at the ARG Summer Invitational that we had this weekend. It's a really great event. Ended up with 241 players going into round one. They went to top cut of 16, which is really nice to see. Gives a little bit more room for different players and different decks to make it. Overall, I thought the event ran really well. We saw a lot of diversity, a lot of new leaders played. We didn't get a whole lot of access to like the power boosters and the anniversary box. Combination of things being new, limited access, and things like that. But overall, I think everything worked out pretty well. We'll get into the card dominance chart. So the most dominant card out of top cut was Dragon Ball, which you have to remember that's a little bit skewed. These Wish leaders are running multiple copies of these. Your pure Shinron runs are typically running 7 Dragon Balls, and your Dendays are running 5 Dragon Balls, 2 1-star balls. And things like that. So that is skewed a little bit, but there were several Wish-based leaders in the Tops cut, so you're going to have way more access to that. Alright, moving on, we've got things like Temporal Rescue Trunks. That was the most dominant super combo in the weekend, which is, again, you're having a lot of black leaders, so that's not uncommon. We'll kind of go down. We got Dragon Radar, World Peace, Crisis Crusher. So this is probably the lowest representation for Senzu Bean that I can remember having, at least recently. It was only in a quarter of the decks played, 25%, and not even all of those played a full playset of Senzu Bean. So that's definitely interesting to see. Moving into the leader breakdown, we had 9 leaders represented. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or maybe 8. Maybe I messed up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, 9. We were correct. Breaking that down, we had 5 Shenron. We had 3 Yellow Dende. We had 2 Broly BR, Yellow Broly BR, 1 Lord Slug, 1 Vanilliku, 1 Pan, 1 Janemba, 1 Toa, and then 1 Purunga. Interesting things of note, no Broly, Yellow Broly BR starter Broly was in the event in Top Cut. Did not do very well. I think there was like 21 or so at the overall event. But none of them that actually cracked top 16, which is really interesting because it won the most recent event prior to this. But we're going to go ahead and get over into our lists. So first up, we have Connor Wood here running a Yellow Dende, and you'll notice a lot of these are kind of grouped up by archetype. We didn't have like a full final official breakdown of standings. We do know who got first, second, third, fourth, but other than that, everything's just kind of glumped together. So Connor, like I said, is running Yellow Dende. So typically with these Yellow Dende lists, you're seeing 2 different kind of splits. You're seeing one that really just emphasizes the Clan of Terror, Mecha Frieza, and the Occupation of Evil. And then you've got other ones that have a couple different tech options. That's what Connor kind of went with. And by tech options, we're looking at Deadly Defender and Frieza Back from Hell, and some various combinations of that. So this weekend saw a rise of Fu the Dark Banisher, particularly. Especially in these Yellow Dende lists, typically you're running the Demigra SCR, but a lot of these Yellow Dendes went ahead and put in the Dark Banisher or ran a split of the Dark Banisher and the Demigra. I think Dark Banisher is a great call for these decks moving forward. Obviously what you're doing with the Yellow Dende is really manipulating your opponent's hand and getting it down low. And then you can drop the Dark Banisher, and they already have a low hand, and then he's even harder to deal with at that point. So really great card for the event. Overall, the deck list is pretty standard when you're talking about the Tekimore list. Moving on into the sideboard, Mutaito, which is a great call. If you're running yellow, I feel like you have to have access to this card. The format has too many bombs to not run this guy. He's got 2 Kami, Global Unifier, 2 Time Control Cronoa, 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 more Crisis Crusher, 3 Haru Haru. Another great call for the event, whether it's Yellow Dende or Starter Broly or Broly BR Yellow or anything like that. There's a lot of yellow-green in the format, more yellow than green, but having access to a card like Haru Haru is a really great call. And finally, 2 Tien Shinhan returning fire. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the sideboard. There's nothing I would really change. You could probably cut the Crisis Crusher. I don't know if you need access to additional ones of these, but I can understand why they're there. But like I said, overall, pretty standard here. Let's move on over into our next list. We have Daehan Dahan is running another yellow Dende. He is running more of your standard main deck Dende. He doesn't have the tech type options, and he is splitting the Fu and the Demigra. So we don't see like the Deadly Defender or the Back from Hell. He is just more running a more solid line of the Occupation into the 7-drop, which is good. Moving on, looking at the list, pretty standard. Moving into the sideboard, we've got 2 Flying Nimbus, 2 Mataito, 2 Vegeta Striving to the Best. I want to cover that a little bit because that's a really great inclusion. For those of you who are unaware, it's a 2-drop. It's from Clash of Fates. It's one of the FRs. Whenever it comes into play, choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode with barrier and KO it. So some cool interactions that you can do with this, with the yellow Dende in particular, is you can revival out clan, pull out something from your opponent's hand that's big and has barrier that you don't want to have to deal with, and then you can just play Striving to be the Best and kill it. So those are really great options there. Moving on, we've got a Frieza Back from Hell. We've got our Dangerous Journey Bulmas, Kami Global Unifier, 3 Heavenly Wizard Demigra, and then 1 Crisis Crusher. So the Heavenly Wizard Demigra kind of fits that same role as the Vegeta Striving that we talked about. So Heavenly Wizard Demigra is whenever you combo or play this card, I believe. I know it's combo for sure, but you can choose up to one of your opponent's battle. If your opponent has 3 energy, you can choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards with 30k power and barrier and KO it. So kind of the same thing with Striving. You play something big off of Clan of Terror, and then you can just play the you can play or combo the Heavenly Wizard and just remove it, so you don't have to like swing into it, which is really good. Something else to note off of the Vegetas and the Heavenly Wizard Amiga, that's a great strategy with this. Let's say you play something that's relatively big, and then you swing into it multiple times and make your opponent defend it. If it's something that they want to save, like if you're looking at like a Path to Greatness or something like that, make them commit cards to saving it. So not only are you removing a card from their hand with the Clan of Terror, but you're making them pitch cards from their hand to save it. So they're really like going down that hand advantage, then you just play the Vegeta Striving and pop it anyway. It's a really great way to play. Generally, people are just gonna feel it, and then they'll just, cool, I'll just get rid of it. I won't worry about pitching my hand. But if they take the bait, that's a great strategy there too. But overall, like I said, pretty standard list. Now you are seeing a full play set of the Ancient Wisdom Guru, which is really great because you get it off the Dende flip, and also Dangerous Journey Bulma can shuffle these back in the deck, which is really strong to have an option to shuffle super combos. Not a lot of decks have that ability, so being able to do that's really good, especially for the yellow Dendes because they get combo heavy. Majority of their stuff is 110Ks, so it's hard to really kind of combo out of things, so having more access to super combos is great. Alright, moving next up, we've got Danny Hype, or Danny Fong Sabbath, I believe is how you pronounce that. He's also on Yellow Dende. He's been on Yellow Dende for a while, so he's pretty familiar with the deck. His deck is, as well, pretty standard. You're not seeing a lot of the tech-type options. His inclusion is he is running Kami main deck as opposed to the side, which is good. Nothing wrong with that. He's going 2-2 on the Occupation and 7-drop. He's also running Flying Nimbus main as opposed to the side. He's going a split of 1 Nimbus 3 time magic, which is really good. Dende, like we talked about, it has a hard time comboing out of things, so sometimes you can just kind of aggro it and rush it down. So Nimbus is really great ways to kind of avoid those. He's also running the Fu and Amiga split. And then we didn't talk about this before, but we're seeing more of this 5-2 1-star ball Dragon Ball split, as opposed to like 6 Dragon Balls and 1 1-star ball. I think that's probably fine. You do have to somewhat be careful for things like Tau, but pretty much if they don't get it out turn 1, then it's not relevant. I mean, it is relevant in terms of you're not going to be able to start like cycling 1-star balls mid to late game. But those situations just kind of come up as they do. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got 1 Battering Laser, which I think it's really good to have access to this in general. 1 more Nimbus. We've got 2 Krillin Ability Unleashed. So this is kind of a cute addition whenever you play it. You can choose 2 of your opponent's cards in their drop area and put it at the bottom of their deck. This kind of mess up numbers for sparking and things like that, so it's kind of a cute inclusion. Curious to see if this ever came into play. 1 Deadly Defender, 3 Dangerous Journey Bulma, 1 Heavenly Wizard, 1 Crisis Crusher, 2 Tien Shinhan, 2 Bardock Fully Unleash, and then an additional Fu the Dark Banisher. The Bardock is there to deal with like Broly type matchups. It works the same way that we were talking about with like the Striving. You play Clan, play something from their hand, play the Bardock, wipe their board. Stuff like that. Other than that, pretty standard. He doesn't have access to Tau, which I think could... I don't know how his matchups went, but I'd probably like to see Tau in there as well. You don't want to deal with hand destruction in general. But overall, pretty solid list. Alright, moving up next, we have Michael. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name because I will butcher it. But this is Michael. He is on Shenron Gogeta Blue Yellow, one of the variations of the Shenron Gogeta that we saw this weekend. He has a little bit more of an interesting list than what you're standardly going to see. Obviously, when you look at this initially, you're looking at the Determined Striker, Super Saiyan Blue Sun Goku, and the Clownless Destruction Belmont. The Determined Striker, you can definitely understand the reasoning behind it. It's a 20k Goku, so it's a fusion target with your 20k Vegetas. It's also a negate if you ever were to need it in that situation, but more often than not, it's just a 20k Goku. The Belmont, I'm not sure why this was here. I mean, obviously it gives you some access to like removal, but overall I just don't think it's fantastic. It's a 4-drop. You're only ever really going to play it off a World Peace, so I don't think it ever really would come into play. I'd be curious to see if you ever actually played it over the course of the event. But other than that, pretty standard. We're also not seeing any Sensu Beans. That was kind of one of the main things that you saw in a lot of these Shenron lists, not running Sensu Bean. If you're running yellow, it probably just come down to space more than it is anything. He is maining the Mutaito and these like these yellow Vegeta and the Belmont, so he probably just didn't have space. I probably would have liked to see Sensu Bean. I think that card's still really, really good. And if you're running blue, I just don't see why not running it. One of the conclusions that we're seeing in a lot of these lists as we go along in it are the newfound power Purunga, which is a really great addition to these Shenron lists. What this is a 3-drop. You can only play it if you're a Shenron leader, and then it has a couple different effects that whenever it comes into play, or once per turn, activate main, you can effectively board wipe. You choose your one of your cards and one of your opponent's cards, and then all the other battle cards get shuffled back in, or you can like draw 2 cards, and I think it's got like a boost effect on a battle card. So really strong. Typically this is going to be used for the board wipe. This helps you deal with things like really wide boards, or if they're playing like Path to Greatness, you can kind of set them back a turn by getting rid of the path. Because it ignores barriers, so it's really good there. He's running the main deck, Bardock Fully Unleashed. I'm not super sold on that. I don't think it's necessary to run it in the main, but really what the deck's trying to do is just get into the Gogeta 7 and just win from there, which the deck did quite often this weekend. He's running just a straight 7 Dragon Ball split, which is kind of standard what you're going to see. He's also running Nimbus. Gogeta Shenron doesn't have like a great early game, so getting access to help with like Swarm and things like that is really good for you. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got 2 Whis. As you'll see, his sideboard's a little teched out, for better or worse. So 2 Whis' Coercion, 1 Super 17, the Infernal Machine. So this is a pretty good like world peace target. It comes into play. You pitch 2 cards, your opponent pitches 2 cards. It's a 20k double striker, and its attack can't be negated. So it's a decent target to give the Shenron Wish ability to. Give him triple strike, double strike, or triple attack, double strike, and his attack can't be negated. And then you can give it like critical off the Shenron Figure of Majesty, so he's a pretty good threat by himself. He's got 2 Planetary Mecha Frieza. He's another world peace target, so you can world peace him into play, and then like choose something in your opponent's hand that you don't want to deal with, took it like heights and things like that, and then either swing in it to kill it, or you could activate Purunga and just get it out of there. So those are pretty cool. Those are pretty cool strategies. Victory Strike's another one. You can put it into play. I don't want to deal with it. Newfound Power Purunga, wipe it from the board, and things like that. We've got 3 Dangerous Journey Bulma. He's not running it main. That's probably fine. 1 Dragon Radar. He's not running Dragon Radar at all in the main, so it's a little interesting there that you even included in the side. 2 Kami Global Unifier, which is good. 2 Time Control Kronoa, and then 2 Crisis Crusher. We don't see access to Tien Shinhan or Tao. Tien Shinhan more than Tao is, I think you probably want access to that. He is, like I said, he is running more of the tech options, so that's why we're not seeing those. I'd be interested to see how these techie type things ended up coming into play, whether they were useful for him or not. Alright, next up we've got CJ Gomes. He is also on Shenron Gogeta Blue-Yellow. He is more of a standard list that you're going to see. He's not running a lot of the tech type options. He is running the Determined Striker, which, like I said, it's probably fine. I don't know that it's overly necessary. He's also running the 4-drop yellow Vegeta, which are both 20k fusion targets, which is good. He's running Nimbus. He's also running Personal Ambition, which I think is a really great call. Really great uses of this is on your flip turn. Like, you can tap out and then use your leader ability to play a Personal Ambition for free, and it gives you access to an energy and draw card, which is really strong. He's also running a 1-star ball, so you get a little access to Disruption, which is nice. He is manning the Dragon Radar, which I think is good. He's going kind of heavy on the Shenron Figure Majesty, as he's running 3. But other than that, he's really just kind of going straight into either the At All Cost Victory or the Gogeta 7, which is really what the deck's trying to do. Moving on into the side, we've got 2 Mafuba, 2 Bad Ring Laser, 1 Crusher Ball, 2 Godly Destruction Whis, 2 Kami Global Unifier, 2 Power Burst, 3 Time Control Cronoa, and then 2 Crisis Crusher. Again, like we talked about, I still feel like you want access to Tien and maybe Tao. I don't know that the Godly Destruction Whis are overly relevant for you, maybe the Crusher Ball as well. And then not running Bad Ring. I'd probably like to see that in the main as opposed to the side, but that's fine. Overall, just pretty standard what you're going to see in terms of these yellow-blue Shenron Gogetas. Alright, next up we have Giovanni. I'm not going to pronounce his last name either because I'll butcher that as well. But he is running just a mono blue Shenron Gogeta, kind of what you expect to see your older school Shenron Gogetas. He has a couple different type of tech options, but most of them work with what the deck's trying to do. He's got Vegeta striving to be the best, which just helps prevent you from aggro and swarm. A Vegeta Pentient Martyr. He's a 20k Vegeta at the low end. At the top end, he is a board wipe. He is running Gogeta 5, which I think is a really good call. I think Gogeta 5 is really good for these decks. You World Peace it in at 5, and then it's a draw 2, bounce 2, 25k double striker, which is really, really good. He's also running the Newfound Power Purunga, like I said, is a very good call. He is running a little bit of the 1-drop options. You've got the Time Control Cronoa, Kami Global Unifier, and the Dangerous Journey Bulma. He's running Power Burst, so these are fine to run. You can get those back off the Power Burst. His kind of tech option is the Energy Barrage Frieza. So this is a 4-drop you play out with World Peace. It's Double Strike 20k, and then it's got auto whenever you play this card. Choose it one of your opponent's battle cards with Barrier, and then KO it. So you can only pop Barrier, guys. So that's kind of problematic running into the main as opposed to the side. I understand why it's there. This is a decent out into things like Path to Greatness on 3. If you're going first on 4, you can World Peace this out, pop the Path, and things like that. Other than that, it's pretty standard. I'm pretty happy with this list overall in general. He's running all the Dragon Balls. Moving on to the side, we've got Burner Spawns Borgos, 2 Mafuba, an additional Vegeta the Pentient Martyr, 2 more Energy Bras Frieza, which I feel like we're a little heavy there, 1 Dangerous Journey Bulma, a Kami, another Time Control Cronoa, and then he is running 4 Mercenary Tau. I feel like that's super, super heavy. I don't think you need 4. I think in this type of list you could run 2 and be fine. Hand Destruction doesn't necessarily bother you that much. I think access to 2 is great. I'd rather see like 2 Mercenary Tau and then 2 Tien. And then finally Crisis Crusher there, which is really good. Overall, pretty solid lists. Like we said, Gogeta was a surprise of the Shenron Gogeta was a surprise of the event, and especially with the variety that we're seeing in these lists, which is really cool. Alright, next up we have William Hicks. He is on Purunga Victory Strike. I'm partial to this deck. I made a big deal about this deck about a month or so ago, and it's really good kind of seeing it doing well now. It kind of caught people by surprise. Even the commentators weren't quite sure what exactly was going on with it. But really what you're trying to do is go to turn 4, or go to turn 3, play Path, turn 4, swap in Height of Mastery, use your Purunga Wish, bring out Explorer Bulma, untap your energy, and then go into Victory Strike, and then you have the energy for like Bad Rings or something like that if you need it. Just again, another Victory Strike matchup. You don't have to ever swing at your opponent until you get to the Victory Strike, which is really strong. It's really good for you. Looking over the list in general, it's pretty standard. Dangerous Journey Bulmas are great to get back your victory strikes in the deck. The only thing I'm seeing that I think is missing is probably Successor of Hope, which you are drawing a lot of cards off the Purunga, but I feel like just having access to a free search for the Path of Greatness is probably good for you. So that might be something you'd look at including. He is running World Peace, which isn't super necessary because of what you're trying to do. It ended up actually being an advantage for him when he was playing like the Yellow Dendays, because they would just kill his stuff and he could just World Peace it back, which ended up doing really well for him. But other than that, the main deck is pretty standard of what you're going to see. Moving on into the sideboard, we've got 2 Bad Ring, 2 Fearless Assault Krillin, so this is just if you get caught with a Victory Strike and a life, so you can try to get those back. 2 Vegeta Striving, pretty good just to pop barrier things like we talked about. A minus Killy Zone, a Kami, a Time Control Cronoa, 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, and then 2 Bardock Fully Unleashed, which helps deal with like the Bardocks and stuff like that. Pretty standard on the sideboard. Like I said, I would like to see probably access to Successor in the main. I don't think you need a whole ton of access to it, but maybe like 1 or 2 would be fine. But other than that, we're pretty standard. There's nothing overtly missing that I'm seeing. So pretty good list here. Really cool to see the Purunga Victory Strike start to finally get some attention and start doing well. Alright, next up we've got Thomas Henry running Toa. So Toa was kind of surprised. This was the first event for Toa to be ran. Thomas Henry ended up doing pretty well with her. Not at all to take anything against or away from what he did, but a lot of, if you watched any of the stream games, a lot of it came from people just not knowing what the Toa did. Thomas still played her very well. It did great getting the top 16 and everything like that, but there were some things like that, if you saw on stream, like I said, where people just weren't quite sure what she was doing. As far as his list is concerned, I'm pretty okay with his list. He is running the Toki Toki engine, which I think personally is the way to go, because you're able to, with the time regulator, start cycling back your super combos at the bottom of the deck, and then the Toki Toki lets you shuffle those so you can actually get access to draw those later in the game. And just it's a consistent draw engine for you in general. So the Kami, the No Escape, the Time Control, and the Toki Toki I think is a really good package for the deck. He is running the main strategy of just get into the 7-drop mirror as quickly as possible. He's going both the mirror route with Dark Absorption and the Self-Reformation. Personally, I don't think you need the Dark Absorption mirror. I just think mirror Self-Reformation is just fine in and of himself. But there's nothing necessarily wrong with running the Dark Absorption. He is also running like the Umbrella Invitation, the Time Ruler, and all that as his Toa package. He gets the option to kind of steal some things. Be curious to see if that ever became super relevant. Personally, I don't think it's that necessary in a run, but I understand why people run it. Dark Banisher or Dimensional Banisher Fu is really good. Toa can remove things like Barrier, and then you can just play the Banisher to pop things, which is really, really nice. The Dark Power Black, or the Mass Day and the Mysterious Warrior, again, kind of works that same strategy. Scientist Who's a great draw. Minus Killy Zone's really good. And then Power Burst to get back your 1-drops and everything like that. Overall, I'm not going to say standard because we don't quite know what a standard Toa list is. This may end up being standard moving forward. I think there's some additions that you can make to make it a little bit more efficient, but overall pretty good here in the main deck. Moving on into the side deck, we've got 3 Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan, 2 Heavenly Wizard Amigra, 3 Crisis Crusher, 2 Haru Haru, 3 Tien Shinhan, 1 Mass Saiyan Mysterious Warrior, and then 1 Fu the Dark Banisher. I'd probably like to see Fu the Dark Banisher in the main because I think it's a great win condition for you, especially after you're removing hands and everything with the Mirror Creator absorbed. Other than that, it's relatively what you'd kind of expect to see. The only thing I think it's missing, and I think this is actually pretty important for Toa, is Mercenary Tau. I know I've harped on this a lot about the Mercenary Tau, but I do think you want access to this in the sideboard, especially with a leader like Toa, who inherently does not have card advantage. I would really, really like to see Mercenary Tau because hand advantage or discard strategies could really affect you that way. So I would like to see that maybe more over like the Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. I don't think that's overly necessary for you. Haru Haru is a great call. And everything else like that I think is pretty good. Obviously, whenever you're playing this deck, make sure you protect this Vegeta Time Regulator is really your engine. If this isn't in play or you don't have access to this, then I don't think Toa does well. So it'll be interesting to see how Toa does moving forward now that people are familiar with it and know what it is doing. So we'll be seeing how that goes. Alright, moving on, we've got Abnel, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and he is on Janemba. For your most part, your standard Janemba. He is running a 331 line on the Janemba engine. Typically you see like a 431 or a 441, but I think this is probably fine. He's not running any of the Psyche Demon, he is running the Childish Heart. Instead, he's running the Awakening Talent Pan, which I totally endorse as a way to make sure you can self-awaken. I think that's very, very good for you. He's running a little bit heavy on the black. He's got 3 Kami, 2 Time Control, and then 3 Lights Guide. I think he'd probably cut that down, maybe like a 2-2 or even like a 2-1 on the Kami and the Time Control. I'm fine running those main deck. I just don't know if you need all of that. You could probably include some different stuff in those spots. He's also running the Fearless or the Further Destruction Champa main, which I think is very good. Overall, just your standard Janemba list. Godstrike Beerus in the main. I like that. I don't know if it's overly necessary, but I do like that inclusion as well. Moving into the sideboard, we get a little bit cute here, the side. So he's running 2 Digging Deep Vegeta. I understand the process behind this. You are running 6 red cards, so you are likely to have to charge that at some point in the game. But at the point where this Digging Deep Vegeta becomes relevant, I just don't know that you ever are going to get in a situation where you're going to have to charge a red. So I think that's kind of cute. I don't like it, to be entirely honest with you. I'd probably prefer to see like a Tapion here instead. Just because it's blue, it's on color and everything like that, as opposed to Digging Deep Vegeta, but I understand why it's there. Moving on from that, we got 1 Mafuba, 2 Striving to be the Best, 3 Sneak Attack Vegeta. This is another one I'm not like super sold on. It's almost counterproductive to what you're trying to do. Whenever it swings, you choose a card in your opponent's hand and put it on top of their deck. Which, if you're playing against Janemba, I don't know that that's necessarily like a negative for you. Like, I guess if you're going in where I'm going to actually like win the game instead of milling, it's probably fine. I'm not super thrilled about that. I think you can include different things here and be fine. We've got 3 Mercenary Tau. He understands you don't do well versus hand destruction if you're playing Janemba, so you need access to this. 2 Crisis Crusher, and then 2 Trunks Power Overseeing Time, which is really good there. I probably would have liked to seen things like maybe a Tien Shenron returning fire on here. Like I said, if you feel you need to awaken wider, you could go with the Tapion over the Digging Deep, and things like that. Other than that, there's nothing really too much here to comment on. It's kind of your standard Janemba list. One of these actually made it into the top, so that's actually good. Alright, moving on, we have Robert. He is running Pan, so this is our 1 Pan player that made it in, so it's really cool to see Pan do well in general. Pan's been kind of on a downward climb more recently, so it's good to see her back doing well. He's running your Pan Zeno, kind of your standard stuff there. Some of his additions are he is running the Trunk Surge of Power from the Anniversary box. He's not overly Earthling heavy in his deck, so this is fine as opposed to like the Yamcha. It's really build dependent. If you're running a lot of the Earthling package, I think Yamcha's better, but since this isn't, this is fine. He is running Bodyguard Legic, which is kind of interesting. It's a free 15k, draw a card effectively off the pan if you have anything in play, which is kind of cool. This is a really cool like turn 1 play. Instead of like playing the Trunks first, you can play him first, so you get your draw and then play the Trunks. So it's kind of cool there. 3 Double Shot Vegetas. We're not seeing a whole lot of that anymore, so it's really cool to see. I think maybe the best inclusion into this deck, 2 of them actually, are the Bardock from the Anniversary box. I think that's great with Pan. So it's a 20k whenever it comes into play with Overwhelm, draw 2 cards, pitch 1. So with Pan, he's effectively a 25k, draw 3, pitch 1. I think that's really, really strong for Pan. So that's really cool to see. He's running the Food the Dark Banisher, which again I think is a really great card, just an overall generically good finisher. So seeing that's really good here, it becomes a 30k with Pan, which is great. He's running the Vegeta Agent of Destruction. I'm not sold on that. He's also at 4 of. I'm not super sold on that. I probably would have liked to seen like the Glory Obsessed Vegeta or something like that, because that's a chain target, and it can attack active mode battle cards and everything like that, which is really good to deal with like Path to Greatness. Obviously you do have access to his second ability because you are running Pan, and since he's running 4 Pan, typically you'd expect to have to charge one throughout the course of the game, so that's an option for you. I'm just not sure that 4 is where I'd want to be. Surprise Attack Frieza is really cool. Your probably throughout the course of the game going to KO a battle card, and you can play it for free. And then if it's on your turn, you can give him 5k and draw a card, so it becomes a 20k crit, which is nice. Other than that, nothing like too out of the ordinary. Moving into the side, we've got one more minus Killy Zone. We've got 2 of the Kai from the anniversary box, which is cool. You play it, draw a card, and then battle cards with 2k or less, or 2 drops or less, can attack for like 2 turns or something like that. So that's pretty strong. 2 Time Kanoa Kanoa, 2 Mercenary Tau, 3 Haru Haru. Great addition with the Haru Haru here. 4 Tien Shinhan. So I think you probably went a little bit heavy on the Tien Shinhan. You have in theory, you already have like a pretty solid main deck matchup versus Janemba because you can be so aggressive, so I don't know that you need 4 of those. And then an additional Fu the Dark Banisher. I probably would have liked to seen like maybe Fu Shrouded in Mystery here over the 2 Tien Shinhan, and maybe not a Dark Banisher on the side, just run the 1 in the main. But you have all sorts of different options there. But really cool to see Pan do well again and make it into the top. Alright, next up we have Samuel Martinez running Shenron Victory Strike. I believe this was in top 4. I'm not 100% sure. I know the top 3 for certain, but I believe this was in top 4. Just more access to Victory Strike. It's one of the best like finishing combinations in the game. Shenron's another great way to run it as well. This is trying to do a lot of the similar things as the Purunga version that we saw. It's trying to go like turn 3 Path, turn 4, swap in a height, activate World Peace, bring in Explorer Bulma, untap 2 energy, go into Victory Strike, have energy for the Bad Ring. That's really what it's trying to do. You get other options, obviously, if you can get out, if you can go to the late game and get like Victory Strike without having to go the Explorer Bulma route, then you can give Victory Strike like plus 10k and triple attack, which is just gross. So if that ever becomes relevant, that's something to pay attention to. As far as the main deck, he's running the Personal Ambition, which, like we talked about earlier, I think is really great for these Shenron leaders. Mutai Ito in the main, I think, is a very, very, very good inclusion. For obvious reasons, it's one of the best cards in the game right now, especially if you're running yellow. Other than that, we're pretty standard here. Moving on into the side, we've got 2 King Piccolo Limitless Power. So this is a really cool tech option. So how this works is it's from the World Martial Arts Tournament Power Boosters, but it says you can choose 2 World Martial Arts Tournament cards in play, not just yours or your opponents, negate their skills and KO them, and then you can play him for free. And he's a 20k double striker, which is really cool. There's a lot of World Martial Arts tournament cards like floating around right now in general, so it's a pretty cool card to see access to. He's also running 2 of the Planetary Mecha Frieza we talked about earlier. That's a pretty cool tech option. 1 minus Killy Zone, 2 Dangerous Journey, 1 Dragon Radar, 2 more Time Control Kronoa, and then he's going heavy on this Newfound Power Purunga and then the Wish Purunga. I don't know that you necessarily need options to both. I'd probably like to see the Newfound Power in the main deck over the Bardock Fully Unleashed. But probably expecting to see more Broly than you are other things, and that might be why that's swapped. I don't know if you need both the Newfound Power and the Wish to Purunga. They do similar things. As always, we'd like to see access to Tau and Tien Shinhan, though, in the side. But again, it's really cool to see these different variations of the Victory Strike. I know people are like tired of Victory Strike by this point, but it's very good, and that's why we're seeing so many different ways to play it. Alright, moving on from that, we've got, looks like Tommy. This is our Lord Slug player. Your pretty standard Lord Slug here. There's nothing really to comment on. The only thing you could probably mention, he is running Fu the Dark Banisher, which I'm on board with, especially in hand destruction type decks. And then as his negates, that's probably where you get a little bit more interesting. So he's running a 3-2 split on the Sacrifice and Shocking Death Ball. Usually you see that flopped. The good thing about the Sacrifice is that you don't necessarily need cards in the drop in order to activate it, so that's probably the reason he went with that over the Shocking Death Ball. His super combo is the 0-0K. It does activate at 5 life, so that could potentially be relevant. I think I still probably prefer the Piccolo one because it's a 0-10K all the time. You can still search it off the Assimilate, so nothing changes there. It's just a preference there. Moving on into the side, we've got 1 Father-Son Kamehameha, 1 more Shocking Death Ball, 3 Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. That's kind of interesting. I don't know that that's overly necessary, to be honest with you. 3 Time Control Cronoa, 1 Heavenly Wizard, 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 Bardock Fully Unleashed, and then 2 Mass Sand, the Mysterious Warrior. That's particularly for like the Kid Coup matchup. But overall, this is kind of what you're going to expect to see 90% of the time whenever you see Lord Slug. These are lists that are going to be like 45 card mirrors of themselves, so there's not like a whole lot of variety, but just really good to see in general that Lord Slug was able to do well. Like I said, people aren't really running access to Tau, so hand destruction can kind of run wild a lot of the time. Alright, next up we've got Robert Russo. He is on Broly Victory Strike. He is running a little bit of a teched out version of it, which is kind of interesting to see. Obviously, your attention kind of gets drawn to this King Piccolo Limitless Power that we talked about. A kind of a cool interaction with that is because you are running World Martial Arts Tournament cards yourself, like the Roshi and Shin, you can just sack those on your own and then play this for free if you feel so inclined, so that's kind of cool. He's going back to the Prodigal Dynasty Sun Goten. Typically, we're not seeing these ran in lists anymore. Most people are just kind of ignoring the Roshi and Shin. So you're seeing a lot of these lists not running this anymore. He's also running the Ultimate Spirit or Ultimate Potential Super Saiyan 2 Son Gohan for removal. It's a swap target. You can get it off his successor. That's pretty good. He's running this 2-2 split on super combos. He's running the Mira. He's running only 2 Bloodlust. Typically, you're seeing 4. That's probably one of the cuts for a lot of these more techier options. He's also only running 2 Time Magic, which I think is kind of rough. I'd like to see 4 there. He's running 1 Fearless Assault Krillin, which isn't overly necessary, but there are situations like if you go first where your Awakening is off a turn, so the Fearless Krillin helps you fix that. But other than that, it's pretty standard. I enjoy the inclusion of Crisis Crusher. I think it is really good for decks like this because Kid Q can sometimes get out of hand for you. But other than that, it's pretty. This isn't a swap build. This is just purely a World Martial Arts Tournament build. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got 3 Announcer Play by Play Pro. This is just more digging options. You can, if you've got 2 World Martial Arts Tournament play, whenever you play, I draw 2 cards. So it's pretty strong. 2 Cronoa, an additional Crisis Crusher, 3 Haru, like we said, that's very good. 2 Tien Shinhan, 2 Trunks Power Overseeing Time, and then 2 Dark Banisher Fu. Or Fu the Dark Banisher, excuse me. Pretty standard here on the side. Like I said, I'd still like to see Tau. That's just a personal preference. But overall, yeah, pretty good here. Alright, next up we're going to get into our top 3. So we got Joey Palladino with the only Kid Q. Kid Q is kind of a disappointment this weekend. There was like 49 or 50 cards overall in the event, and only 1 made top cut. Joey is running a different version of what we're standardly seeing on these Kid Q lists, as we'll get into. More like the first thing you're going to see is he's not running Android 8 at all. He's also running 3 4-star balls. So that opens you up to run some more like techie type options and things like that, which I think could potentially be useful. I probably would have liked to seen maybe the Android 8 still. I still think it's necessary just because that ability is so good. Into the list itself, it is blue-yellow. So he's running Sensu Beans, which is good. He's running for the Fearless Assault Krillin to help you self-awaken, God the Destruction Whis. He's running Mutaito. I think yellow moving forward is probably going to be the way to go with Kid Q, just because of access to the Mutaito card. It's just so strong. Source of Power is another way to help you awakening kind of late game if you're kind of stuck with Crisis Crusher. And you can't get the Fearless Assault Krillins going on. Source of Power is really good. It's also just a really good, it's effectively dual attack at 20k, which is strong. Training Ready Krillin, I really like that. I think those are necessary moving forward because of all the Crisis Crusher floating around. So you can kind of get a wide board and deal with the Crisis Crusher at the same time, so I'm a fan of that. Overall, a pretty cool list. Like I said, it is different. We're only seeing 3 of the 4-star balls, where typically you're seeing 5 or 6. 6 is the norm. So he's running half of that, but that gives him room to run like the Source of Powers and things like that. Moving on to the side, Godstrike Beerus, which is kind of cool. 1 Bad Ring, 2 minus Killy, a Power Burst, 2 Time Control Cronoa, 3 Haru, which was, like I said, I think that's very good. 2 Mass Sand, that's really good in the mirror. 2 Fu the Dark Banisher, which is pretty strong. Like I said, it's just a generically good finisher. And then the Beyond Darkness Nemigra, which typically you see in the main. You're seeing it here on his side, which is interesting. I'm curious to see what his reason behind citing this as opposed to maining this was. But overall, like I said, it's a different list. You're going to have to start making different Kid Coup lists in order to start doing well. People have kind of figured out what Kid Coup is, what it does, and all that kind of stuff, and ways to get around it. So you're going to have to learn to adapt, and so it's cool seeing a list that has adapted. Alright, moving on, we've got Graham Maxwell. So this is our second place list. This is a mono blue, effectively mono blue Shinron Gogeta. It does have some access to yellow, but really in the main it's more just blue. Overall, you got the newfound power Porunga in the main, which I think is very good. His kind of tech option is the Desperate Warrior Son Goku, so that's removal for you if you have Sparking, which is kind of cool to see. He's only running 3 World Peace, which is interesting, and then he's also running the Super Dragon Ball, which again is very interesting. Typically you just see Dragon Ball as opposed to the Super Dragon Ball. Typically like turn 2 is like a great objection play for you, so I'm curious to see those situations. I know he did have trouble awakening or flipping in the finals versus Anthony, so I wonder if in hindsight he'd prefer to have just normal Dragon Balls as opposed to the Super. But other than that, it's pretty standard. He's only running 3 Sensubin, which I feel like you just run 4. I don't understand why just running 3, but that's fine. He's running the yellow Son Goku, that's a 20k that gives you access to yellow like in the sideboard. Which, moving on to the sideboard, you get 2 Vegeta, or Goku striving to be the best, Bad Ring, 2 Nimbus, Musa Ito. He's only got 1. I feel like you want more than that. Maybe he only had access to 1, but I feel like you definitely want more than that. 2 minus Killy Zone, 3 Dangerous Journey Bulma, or 2 Dangerous Journey Bulma, excuse me, 1 Dragon Radar, Time Control, 2 Crisis, and then Demigra. Not sold on the Demigra. I feel like you have 2 great winning conditions main deck as it is, in the Gogeta 7 and the At All Cost. I don't think Demigra is necessary. You could cut that out for more like flexibility in your side. Other than that, though, I think it's fine. Crisis Crusher, maybe you want to include that in the main as opposed to the side. But other than that, pretty standard. He ended up running really hot and doing really well with this. This lets people know that Shinron Gogeta is a thing again. I'm still not personally sold on the deck myself. I think it was a great call for this weekend. But again, it's just really good to see these leaders and these deck archetypes that haven't done well start doing well again at these events. Alright, and then finally we have our Anthony Hernandez, our champion for the ARG Invitational, running Broly Victory Strike. So just to preface this, the official list that was provided was incorrect. It only had 48 cards listed. I know he ended up getting a game loss in Top Cut when that was figured out. I think that was just an omission thing, not an intentional thing. We ended up finding out that the omitted card was these 2 Miras. What he had to do was bring in 2 cards from his side and run that in the main as opposed to these Mira spots. Overall, probably didn't end up affecting him too much. Obviously, he was undefeated in Swiss. He's undefeated on the day, really. I mean, so he ran really, really well. Obviously, Anthony Hernandez, that's kind of what you expect as we get into this list. It's a very consistent list. You're never going to see anything like spicy in his list. His lists are built for consistency, and in my mind, that's why they do well. Going into the list, so he is running a combination swap World Martial Arts Broly, which I think is the way going forward. You get access to early aggression with the dependable dynasties, swapping into those, and then you also get the draw power off the Roshi Shin. Musa Ito in the main, which I think is necessary. Gine here to support, which if people aren't aware, this card's very, very good. Not only is it a swap target off the Grandpa Gohan because it's a 2-drop Goku's lineage, but she's got the ability whenever you attack or combo with her, you can take the top 3 cards of your deck and put them in drop area. So this works for a couple different ways. Obviously, it helps fill the drop for Sparking, which is really good for you. It also helps fill the drop for like Overwhelm because he's running the Mirror and stuff like that. So overall, a very, very good card there to run for this. He is running a 3-1 Sugesh full surveillance Jocko split, which is fine. Sugesh is just here to get Path out. He's running a 3-4 split on the Path and High to Mastery, which I think is probably the way to go since you are running Successor, so you have 7 ways to get the Path, which is good, as well as all of your draw. As you saw in the finals match, this deck has more versatility than your standard Victory Strike, because you can, if things go poorly, you can just almost go to a Storm route with the Gohans and Dependable Dynasty and the Gines and just start swinging big and wide and then go in with the Mira there. So it's really good options for you. 4 Bloodlust, 4 Time Magic, I think that's the way to go. Moving on into the side, so we've got the King Piccolo, Limitless Power, same thing we talked about. You have access to get it out on your turn just by sacking your Roshi and Shin, and you get a 20k Double Striker for free, which is strong. 2 Battering, he's not running them in the main, which is interesting, but he's also running more additions, so you kind of run out of room. No Escape Son Goku, I don't know that that's overly necessary, but it's there. You got the 2 Time Control Klonoa, Toki Toki. The Toki Toki kind of lets you find those. 2 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, and then 2 Bardock Fully Unleashed. So overall, a really good list. This is going to kind of be the skeleton moving forward for these type of decks. So if you're building a Broly High Mastery deck, this is really where your starting point is going to be. Obviously, Anthony Hernandez ran it. It runs really well. You still need to be a good pilot for the deck. You just can't like sleeve this deck up, go to an event, and do well. That's why we only saw 2 Broly High Masteries make top cut. But it's very strong whenever it hits. People are a little bit more prepared for it. People will be more prepared for it moving forward, especially in terms of things like Mutaito and things like that. Obviously, Broly can get around the Mutaito, but if you play around that, there are ways to keep Broly from playing around it. So there's a lot of play back and forth with that kind of stuff. But overall, great list. Anthony Hernandez, he's a great player. Whether you like him personally or not, you can't say much about him as a player. He does very well. But anyway, guys, that is it. That is top 16. Like I said, great event. Great to see a lot of new leaders do well. Old leaders come back and do well. Different archetypes and things like that. But that is it, and we will see y'all next time.